It's time for the Kim Hammer Show, where you'll learn how your state government affects you, your family, and community. Here's Kim Hammer.
Good Saturday afternoon. Hope you're having a great day, enjoying a great spring weekend. A little cool out there this weekend, but it's a beautiful weekend, so we're glad to have you joining us, and hopefully your time will be beneficial as we finish up our show today. Anytime you want to go up and check out the KimHammerShow.com website, you can get the previously recorded shows up there, go to the blog, check it out, and we try to keep all the current information up on the website about things that I think might be of interest to you, either here in the state or things happen around the nation, and that's www.thekimhammershow.com. So if you would, please go up there and like that. Get your friends to like it if you would, please. It just helps out. All right, today on the Kim Hammer Show, we've got two guests. We got one call-in, Senator Mat Pitsch, who's actually stepping in because I had a vacancy pop up at the last minute. So I got Senator Mat Pitsch on, who I serve with in the Senate, but also running for the treasurer's office here in the state, and do want to talk to him about a couple things with the instability in the stock market and things just kind of rocking along, and with everything going on in the world, what some of his ideas are as far as investments that would be handled at the Treasury, and also how that might impact us long term going forward, and just get a few ideas from him. And then I've got Walter Burgess, resident from down in Bryant, Saline County, running for the seat that's newly created down there. And so I've got him in studio. And Walter, thanks for driving in for the Kim Hammer Show today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Very good. Pull the mic a little closer if you would. But I'm going to start off with Matt. Matt, thanks for stepping in at the last minute to help out today, and hope you're having a good weekend. Appreciate you coming on.
Well, it's always an honor to be with you on the Kim Hammer Show. Thank you for the invite. I should say to your other guest, I saw some Walter Burgess signs around Bryant last night as I drove, so they look good. So
just the little 4x8 ones, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, those. I'm going to tell you, when all of our political careers are over, I'm going to tell you the best thing you can use 4x8 signs for, from personal experience, okay? They make great wraps for deer hunting stands. They'll last about 7-8 years around a deer hunting stand because those things are wax coated. And I had some on stand from when I ran back in 2006, and those things will really last. So
my deer hunting place, we use them for target backers.
Yeah, well,
they make good things to shoot holes through. They last. They're pretty rigid when a bullet goes ripping through a target, stapled to it. So, anyway.
Let's not give anybody ideas here. But anyway, yeah, Matt, you came down to the Bryant Chamber of Commerce banquet the other night, and so appreciate you coming down there to Saline County.
Well, I did, and I enjoyed it. Met a lot of people, sat with a lot of nice people at the table. It's a great evening, big crowd, and an amazing junior high school, just brand new there. So very impressed once again with Bryant and all that's going on in that community.
Yeah, so. And the entertainment wasn't bad. For those of you that didn't know, it was an acrobatic show. They had twirlers, they had jugglers, they had and I don't know what you call it, but suspended ring from the ceiling, and kind of like somebody at the table said, I don't know if they're hurting, but I'm hurting just watching them.
Watching them, exactly. They did things that I don't know that my body would even consider anymore. So
no, we'd all be in a straitjacket or a cast, one or the other. So it was a good night. Good night.
Very good evening. Very good evening.
All right, Matt. Let me ask you. So what? Well, first of all, one thing I don't think we've talked about is we finished the fiscal session recently. Did it in pretty short order, and had a lot of good things achieved. Just your summary thoughts of the recently completed fiscal session for Arkansas. Any wrap up thoughts you had about it?
Couple things come to mind. I don't know. You probably want a short answer, so I'm just going to say AAA from bond rating from a AA bond rating, and that occurred because the legislature decided put away some long-term debt reserve in case times get ugly. And I will say this, we're going to talk later, I think, about the economy in general. But I have a real big fear that if we didn't have some sort of a savings account, emergency fund, long-term debt, this state was a fiscal duress type state. It had no money to fall back on. And because there's money being pumped into our economy from the feds, which many of us disagree with that and are glad that's slowing down and stopping. The reality of it is, if you didn't take that money and put it aside for a reserve, it would get spent. And it was the right thing to do to build a savings account. So,
Well, and I know we're going to have about 1.2 billion in the, in the account for our nest egg, sort of say. And there are people already that are talking about, wanting to grab that to do this, that, and the other with it. But I think one thing that will prove out in time, and only time will prove it out, is that when all this federal money dries up and states that have, created programs that are going to be dependent upon an ongoing cash flow, those are the states that are going to be hurting. And I think we're positioned as a state, because of the conservative nature of which we have handled the money, that we are going to be buffered from some of the repercussions that financially are inevitably going to be coming down the line.
Yeah, no, there's just no doubt about it. And I remember the first day I walked into the legislature being very uneasy. I mean, I guess I'm old school. Those of your listeners who listen to Dave Ramsey says, live like grandma. Mm-hmm. We had no fallback. We literally were like a personal income budget where you got paid on Friday and it was all gone next Friday when you got paid again. No means for any kind of emergency. And that's why we were a AA bond rating with very high interest rates on any projects as a state, because we were fiscally under duress. Now the market sees us as a ready to handle an emergency with even a small. I mean, that's 3 months. Dave Ramsey, and if you listen to him, would tell you, and any financial investor would tell you need 6 months worth of savings for when that emergency comes. At $1.2 billion on a $6 billion budget, we're less than a fourth. So we're just under 3 months. It's better than we've ever been, but we need to make sure that stays in play for emergencies only. And nobody, we did that. We made it a much tougher threshold for anybody to get their hands on it. But that needs to stay in play for a disastrous economy if it should come at us.
Well, and I think about all the construction projects that are going on, whether it's what we did to increase our presence in the steel mill industry up in Northeast Arkansas, or all the construction highway projects that are going on. This is one thing I would hope the average person would realize, and that is that the better our bond rating is, the stronger we are financially as the state. Actually, the more we save, because when we do need to borrow in order to do these projects that are out there, it's not costing us as much, just like a credit card.
Exactly.
If your credit score is good, you get the better deals. If your credit score is bad, or they view you as financially not stable, you're going to pay more. But if you need a dishwasher, you got to have a dishwasher. You're just determining the terms of which you're going to pay for it long haul.
I'm guessing you read the article or saw something like it. But this is a very partisan statement, so I'm just going to say it, though. When you have a predominantly red state, you see economies that are thriving. Mm-hmm. And the definition in the article I read, economies that are thriving, are those that are moving dirt. When you're building construction, then you're creating jobs, and you're creating a multi-layered job. You got the guy out there on the earth-moving equipment. You've got the construction guy. You've got people that make windows and doors and appliances, and all of those jobs are rolling over because an entity, a state, is moving dirt. That is a strong sign of an economy. We in Arkansas have that. I'm running for a statewide race, and everywhere I go, I see brand new junior highs in Bryant. I see brand new buildings across the state. I see projects. That's a great thing. But what do we do if that dries up? That's when the problems start.
Right. And then you don't have the tax base, et cetera, and it's just a downhill slide from there.
Yeah, it's a self-fulfilling promise is what it is.
Okay, so let me ask you as a treasurer, and then I'm going to bring Walter into the discussion because he is a businessman. He owns a manufacturing, which you've owned a manufacturing business. So you two, I'll just get out of the way and you two talk. But
all right.
So what, from the position of being a treasurer, what do you think are some of the safeguards that we need to continue to have in place, and the investment strategies? Because when you look at what's happening in Russia and just the unstable condition of the financial market across the world, you look at oil and what's being done with oil. And just as a sidebar, I disagree 100% with President Biden's decision to go into the reserve to get the oil. Just open up the cotton picking pipelines and put people back to work. get the oil flowing, get us back to energy independence, and don't spend what we may need in a greater crisis down the road. But you've got to factor all those kind of things into play when it comes to the financial investment strategies of the state and where you park the money. So talk for a minute about, given the instability of the world, what are some of your thoughts as far as the investment strategies of the state?
Well, you just said a ton, but the saying that came across my chalkboard as I was listening to the question was Grandpa. My grandparents were both Wyoming cattle ranchers, and you never borrow your way into prosperity. And as a country, we can't borrow our way into a solid economy. We can't take the oil from other nations when we have the ability to provide our own energy solutions. You never, ever get ahead being beholden to someone else. And as a treasurer, we have a lot of barriers, rightly so that we don't take the treasury and, I don't know, I'm not a gambler, but we gamble it away on something risky. We have things in place that keep us, bumpers and guards, if you will. And the national economy is real. It affects our state treasury. I, for one, think, and I wish we have this system set up. We have what's called the lottery for local Arkansas banks to be our investment tool. So that dollar goes into an Arkansas bank, which then is rolled into one of those let's move dirt projects in the local communities. The problem we have right now is our banks are flush with cash. So you kind of enlarge your circle that if the local banks in Arkansas don't want to get into the lottery system to be an investment tool for the state treasury, then you have to be very cautious with what you do with that. Because I'm good with American companies. I'm even good maybe with some allies if the American companies don't want to play in the investment world of the Arkansas State Treasury. But I'm not good going against people who aren't our friends. That makes you beholden to them, and we have to avoid that at all costs.
I think the Bible says the borrower is servant to the lender. That's the one position
Absolutely.
I don't want to get into.
Exactly. That's another good grandma saying to come to light here as you ask for investment strategies. To me, the best investment strategy is, I think, the economy. You asked earlier about the national economy. I'm gravely concerned with where our stock market is right now. And when you become a treasurer, you got to be real careful what you're saying. And I'm a candidate for treasurer, so I can say this now, and I probably wouldn't be able to if the voters elect me. But the reality of it is, if you look at our stock market, it's over 2 times what it was when the current treasurer started 8 years ago. That, to me, is very disconcerting and unnerving, if you will, because I'm old school. I'm old enough to remember when a stock was based on the price to earnings. What kind of earnings did that company make? So then the stock had a price, and the price to earnings ratio was a key factor. Well, if you look at our companies in the stock market now, very few of them have a price to earnings ratio that's relative. It's if Kim wants to buy it from Matt, then that's the price of the stock. That's a very precarious place to be with regard to the stock market. So I've talked a lot with the staff members at the treasurer's office trying to learn the office, and they all have informed me that their job was to be aggressive, that the stock was going from, if you will, a Dow of 14,000 to a Dow above 30,000, doubling in nature. One of the things I think the next treasurer is going to have to do is make sure we play common sense. Maybe instead of such an aggressive offense, we need to play some defense with our state treasury, protect it, have it in solid investments that aren't at risk. So that, I think that's the best answer I can give you right now. Anticipating the Fed probably giving us 5 to 7 interest rates adjustments, that's going to dramatically affect that stock market, and we want to be solid with the savings account when that happens.
All right. Let's kind of transition a little bit. So I've got Walter Burgess in, who's running, what's the House seat down there?
It's House seat 81, replacing the old 31.
Okay. I think that was my number. But anyway, all these number changes are going to get a little...
I know, they're fun.
Yeah, I know. I parked in the wrong spot the other day, and the senator kindly let me know that I parked in the wrong spot because the numbers had changed. So anyway, so we got Walter Burgess on, who's running for seat 81, which is a newly created seat down in Saline County that is predominantly in the Bryant area.
It's about 2/3 Bryant, all of Alexander and Shannon Hills and Vimy Ridge, if you want to throw that in there.
Sure. So let me kind of tie let's kind of tie the two conversations together. And then Matt, after the bottom of the hour, I'll let you go. But so Walter runs a business. The business you run is what?
Power technology.
And they do what?
We are a laser manufacturer, manufacturing lasers for all sorts of high-tech applications.
Okay. And Matt, you've run a industry before, or run a business
Yes.
before. You still do, for that matter.
I'm an electrical engineer, but I've worked at Whirlpool as my first job, and I own several businesses. We've had a biometric gun safe manufacturing business, a table and chair furniture business, and predominantly my other business ventures are agriculture in nature.
Okay, so let me ask you, two businessmen, from a perspective of somebody looking to locate a business, why would you want to come to Arkansas and speak as current businessmen, but also speak as from a financially solid position as a state? What is it that makes us attractive? What is it that does not make us attractive as two current businessmen? And let me start with you first, Walter. You've had your business here in Arkansas how long?
52 years.
Oh, well, good night. Okay.
Yeah.
So what keeps you here? Let me put it that way.
Well, I mean, it really comes down to the people. The people of Arkansas have a great work ethic. We come from an agricultural background, and that's just in our DNA. The work ethic of our employees is just amazing. We just recently had a young lady by the name of Joan. She retired after 43 years with the company. And, you just don't find that these days. Our average employee's there 17 years. And so it's that work ethic and that commitment of the Arkansas employee that makes them a unique commodity. The disadvantage for Arkansas is basically the tax structure. We've got states around us that have lower taxes, and they're perhaps a little more attractive on business retention and business attraction.
So do you think that the $500 million tax cut that we just gave this past session is going to have any impact on that? Or when you talk about the tax structure, are you talking about those that are more geared toward businesses?
Yeah, I'm talking about the business tax structures, and I think the moves that we've been making are great. I mean, for me as a small business owner, that allows me to hire half a person, and that offsets that cost. And that half a person can then create about 6 jobs. So, I mean, it's a major impact for us to have some tax relief, and I think we've got some steps further we can make as well.
So let me ask you, two businessmen, Matt, because, if you are elected as treasurer, it is going to have, some impact on the Treasury. What are y'all's opinions, or what are your views as businessmen of the areas where we need to work on with tax reduction for businesses?
Would you like me to go first, or
Sure,
you
go
want
ahead.
Walter? Okay. Well, I'm gonna back up to that last question. Mr. Burgess is absolutely correct. It's people. We have the greatest workforce for any state I've been in 3 different states owning businesses. Our people are amazing here. The second is logistics. We are the southern corridor across this country. A manufacturing firm brings stuff in, raw goods, does their magic, and ships finished goods out. So 2/3 of basically what you do are transportation and logistics of incoming raw goods and outgoing finished goods. And we are primed for that. We're the southern corridor across the United States. We need to get our roads where they're functional, our river where it's functional, our railroad needs to be built up and infrastructure applied there. I mean, we have the ability to win with infrastructure. The third thing, as Mr. Burgess said, is the tax structure. Now, the legislature came in at 7% income tax, and we fought that battle. I mean, we're down to 5.5, and with triggers will be 4.9. The Heritage Foundation says that when our tax liability per citizen over all kinds of taxes, when our income tax gets to 5.2, then our entire tax liability per citizen will be lower than the states around us, even though they have 0 income tax. Now, that's a personal type tax. And to Mr. Burgess's comment, we still have work to do on corporate tax. We got to keep driving that down for the industries that are coming here. But I'd also say that we've made some pretty major strides. Per capita, this last year, Arkansas was the #1 move-in state of citizens. And people vote with their feet. They go where the income tax is low, the cost of living is 80 cents on the dollar, an accurate number, where the price to buy a house is 60 cents on the dollar. Those are kind of things where people on our coast look at that and go, well, there's a great quality of life, a great school in Bryant, a great school in Northwest Arkansas, good schools and growth in Jonesboro. All across this state, we have communities that are surviving and doing more than that. They're growing, and people are moving to them. So we have work to do on the corporate tax structure, and we need to keep driving the income tax down as well.
Walter?
Yeah, I agree. Amen. The opportunity for business owners to invest in their businesses tantamount. I mean, you just have to create a business environment. I think a lot about entrepreneurship. I think a lot about how to create those jobs. Matt was talking about, how to manage state funds. And I think we've got a great opportunity with the teacher retirement fund. They have a risk classification of money set aside already that they pay someone out of state to manage. And that high risk category that they have, unfortunately, the managers are out of state managers. They don't think about investing that money here in Arkansas to create jobs. Well, I think about it, and I think about it with some very good thought leaders. We without changing the risk profile of the teacher retirement system, we could selectively bring that investment into Arkansas to grow startups, entrepreneurship, small businesses. And I think the difference that it would make in Arkansas is tremendous.
I noticed on your and your website, give the folks your website.
Yeah, burgess4arkansas.com.
And you can go up there and look, and I've noticed some of your, accomplishments that you've got include being a former chair of the Arkansas STEM Coalition, former board member of Little Rock Museum for Discovery, current board member of Accelerate Arkansas. You serve on the Dean's Advisory Boards of both University of Central Arkansas College of Math and Science and University of Arkansas Little Rock College of Science. You presently serve on the Industrial Engineering Advisory Board of UILR. You and Matt probably ought to have a sidebar conversation.
We could probably have a great time.
I was going to say, I might need to move to Bryant and vote for the guy. He sounds just like my kind of candidate.
Yeah, well, y'all got a lot of expertise in that area. Where's your plant located anyway?
We are 10 feet outside of Little Rock on the better side of Saline County.
Okay.
And, we're on the Saline County Road, Alexander Road. Used to be called something else, but Alexander Road.
Okay, I know where you are then. So what is it that you? I've got about 3 minutes to bother me. What is it that you manufacture in your plant? You talk about lasers, so give us an example if you're able to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have to kill you afterwards, but we do manufacture some defense products. Missile guidance is a specialty of ours, but also lasers for life sciences, things that go into biomedical equipment that detect cancer or analyze blood, and then semiconductor manufacturing equipment. These big $2 million piece of capital equipment that are in semiconductor fabs depend on lasers. And so we're fortunate enough to make very sophisticated lasers. So I deal with high-tech problems and complex problems all day long, and I think that's a great qualification for the complexities of state government.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to give the second half totally to Walter here in just a second. But, Matt, you got anything you want to share regarding anything about investment strategies of the state or any other thoughts you want to give before we take a break?
Well, it probably doesn't go to the treasurer's office, but because you have two engineers, both of us active in trying to get young people, it sounds like, into the technical world, I want to use an example at Chaffee Crossing. 14 years ago, it was a military base realignment closing and just sat there. And I was asked to go out there and fix it, get some companies to move there. And I wanted to do screwdriver manufacturing, blocking and tackling. However, with the advent of time, we now have 3 medical colleges out there where we wanted 40-some manufacturers. We still need manufacturers, but the new manufacturers, much like Mr. Burgess's business, high tech, we have to invest not only in dollars, but in our people. He mentioned STEM and others. We have to get the talented workforce that can handle those biometric gun safe businesses, those laser businesses, because that's where the industries are going.
Well, and I think our most valuable resource that we have would be our people.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
One of the things I know that happens with some of the universities, people come here, they get a good education, and then they're stolen away by other states. They're recruited by other states, industries in other state. and that puts us at a disadvantage. If we can work collectively together to get the tax rates down without breaking the bank. I mean, we are a government that has to provide services. There's always that ongoing battle of what services should we be providing as a government, and what should people be getting on their own. If we can continue to expand a good work base with good salaries to where we can get people off the Medicaid roll and get them into independent living, not being dependent upon the government, that's one of the greater things that we can do to help build a strong state and a state that's going to be a leader. All right, I've got to take a break. Matt, if you want to hang on afterwards, that'd be fine. If you got to go, I appreciate it, but I'm getting the eye from Heidi. We're going to take a break here on the Kim Hammer Show. We'll be back in a couple minutes after the break. Welcome back to the Kim Hammer Show here on a beautiful Saturday. We have in studio Walter Burgess, who's running for seat. Give me that seat number again.
81.
81. Lost my notes there. 81, which is down in Saline County, predominantly 2/3 Bryant, goes over to Alexander, Shannon Hills, that area over there. And then we may still have on the line Mat Pitsch, who's joined us last minute because I had a gap I needed to fill. So, Matt, appreciate you stepping in there. So, Walter, let's go to what would be some of your ambitions? And first of all, if you want to take a minute, we talked about your business, but anything you want to share with people about you personally as far as family structure, anything that you think is vital for people to know to get better acquainted with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So been in Bryant for 20-something years, married to my wife for 27 years. She's a registered nurse over at the Encore Arkansas Heart Hospital, one of our biggest employers in the region. And so really proud of her and my 3 children, and look forward to serving them as well as the citizens of Bryant, Shannon Hills, Alexander.
I'd say this, whether she was your wife or not, I got great respect for everybody in the medical field, especially the last 2 years.
Amen.
And especially the nurses. And we can go into a whole debate about vaccine shots and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, my personal opinion is if you're an RN, nurse, anyone in the medical field that has stuck it out for the last 2 years, the last thing we need to be doing is throwing you to the curb. We need to be giving you all the praise we can give you for what you've endured. I was talking to somebody with Encore this past week, and about capacity, and they've been operating at full capacity like all the other hospitals, and it's put a real demand on the nurses. So, kudos and praise to our medical teams.
Yeah, they need some more nurses. If you want to come over there, they need you.
I was a medic once upon a time, but I was never a nurse, so that'd be like putting Mat Pitsch in charge of the nurses. But anyway,
only in my dream.
Yeah, only. So what, with regards to your involvement in Bryant, what are some of the things you do now, or in the district that you're in now? What are some of the things you do?
Yeah, so there's 2 things I want to talk about. I am the vice chairman of the Bryant Planning Commission, so I support economic development in a whole lot of ways. One of the ways I'm going to support economic development is this coming Monday in the Bryant Planning Commission, 6 o'clock. We're talking about some possible solutions for traffic congestion in front of the Chick-fil-A and Lowe's. I know no one in Bryant, thinks about that traffic. That's a joke, actually, but it's one of our biggest traffic problems. And so I'm bringing forward a proposal in the Planning Commission meeting. And so we're going to address that, have an open conversation. I've already spoken with the ownership at Lowe's, Centennial Bank, and Chick-fil-A. Talked to traffic engineers at RDOT. And, that's some of the stuff I do for fun. But the second item, one of the things that gives me the greatest satisfaction is supporting entrepreneurship and helping to build businesses. So fortunately, the governor appointed me to the Science and Technology Board within AEDC a couple of years ago. And through that board, I have the privilege of helping to administer about $4.5 million every year. And that goes specifically to help startups, entrepreneurs, and small businesses create jobs. If I've got time for a quick story,
sure.
Back on Valentine's Day, we had Nanometronics out of Northwest Arkansas come to us. and they've got a product called a organ on a chip, and it allows for better treatment of traumatic brain injuries. And so they had done all the science, they had done all the laboratory work, and they needed help commercializing it. They came to the state board of science and technology board, and they said, "We've got this. We just need a little help to bring jobs into the manufacturing process, and so we can help people with that traumatic brain injury." And those are the type of injuries you get with IED explosions or car crashes.
Mhm.
And so we've got that kind of great skill set in Arkansas that want to build jobs, and I love to support their type of efforts.
So let me ask you, do you know if they're connected with Timber Ridge out on 298?
I'm not aware of that connection.
Okay, well, they need to get connected with Timber Ridge because Timber Ridge deals with traumatic brain injury
Timber Ridge.
patients.
I'm going to write that down.
And I've been out there a couple times to tour it. It's a great facility. It's one that'll grab your heart when you go out there because of what people are having to deal with traumatic brain injuries. But just try to get those two connected. I'm sure they probably know about each other given the industry that they're in. But if not,
Yeah.
they need to be connected with each other because of the population that they deal with. So,
Absolutely.
okay. Sorry, go ahead. I
No,
interrupted you.
you asked for two things I do for fun or locally, and those are the two. What's unique about me is that I have local experience, like the Bryant Planning Commission. I have the statewide experience, like the AEDC board that I just mentioned. And then my business aspect, I bring in some national and even international experience. So my experience spans a lot further than just Bryant, and that differentiates me a lot from some of the other people in the race.
So, what do you think are your qualifications? I mean, obviously, you've kind of gone through a long list already, but what got you the notion of wanting to run for House of Representative seat? What do you think you bring to the table other than some of the things that you mentioned that would qualify you for that?
Well, I knew if I didn't get in the race, I would be frustrated with myself. I've seen the last 2 years, I've seen the government overreach, I've seen the mandates and the regulations increase exponentially. And I knew if I didn't do something about it, I would feel bad. Honestly, I'd be frustrated with myself and I would just get more angry and bitter. So I'm the type of person that just sort of takes ownership of a problem, just like the Bryant Chick-fil-A problem. I just want to get in there and fix it sometimes. And it's probably a fault of mine. I probably take ownership too much of problems that maybe I can't control. But, I knew that something had to be done. We had to have a state legislature that was going to be the last line of defense for our rights. And I knew that someone needed to defend them.
Well, and I just want to make this comment about the Chick-fil-A intersection down there. That's a good problem to have because
Yeah.
it does indicate the growth that's going on down in that area. I will give them credit; they get them through pretty quick. I've
Oh,
always
yeah.
been impressed with Chick-fil-A and their operation
They're
and
an
ability to
awesome
move.
organization.
Yeah, lost his guy. Parker runs that down there. They do a great job down there just trying to get everybody through there, but that is a congested intersection. But that's part of the problems you have with growth, too, just like I-30 going down through there, or a lot of the other construction projects that are going on throughout the state. It does take some investment of time and energy and resources to try to keep projects moving and keep them, on the straight and narrow. If you did make it to the legislature, what would be some of your goals that you would want to work on specifically?
Yeah, so I've already hinted at one with the Arkansas teacher retirement system being an economic engine for our state. Anything that creates jobs will be a priority for me. I come from an economic development background. I'm pursuing a certification in economic development, and so that mixed with STEM are two great things. And STEM jobs, most people don't realize they bring between a 26 and an 89% higher average wage every year. So if we can get more kids into STEM, and that includes things like computer science, that's really going to have an economic impact for Arkansas and improve our quality of life even further. But probably one of my other priorities that's Saline County specific is that we have a new Saline County Water Authority, and I don't have the acronym for that correct. But, right now, a lot of Saline County is beholden to Central Arkansas Water, and it's a monopoly situation, and the rates at Central Arkansas Water continue to go up, up, and up. In business, we believe in competitive, factors. And so if we support what's happening in Saline County now for the Saline County Water Authority, it's going to actually, hopefully, air quotes, reduce water bills and have a physical impact on our residents.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the project you're talking about is where the Saline County Water Authority, or whatever the proper name is, have actually purchased land down on the Washita River. And they would be able to put in a treatment plant, which would directly bring water, which has been a long-standing challenge. I mean, once there was a idea of building, a lake to provide that independent water source.
Yeah.
But anyway, that would bring a main water line down, not only Saline County, but it would also bring water to a pretty big catchment area as a result of that being able to come out of the Washita River.
Yeah. And that would help Shannon Hills. It would help Alexander and Bryan, of course, and many other communities in Saline County.
Well, one thing I would say, you can't have too much water, but you sure are in a bind if you don't have enough water.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's essential for life.
Yes, as well as all other infrastructure. You mentioned a while ago about overreach. What were you referring to when you talked about government overreach?
Some of the things that disturb me, and I'll give you an extreme example. In February, I was in Nancy Pelosi's territory in San Francisco,
Bless you.
and yeah, it was traumatic. I'm scarred for life, but our big laser shows there every year. But anyway, what struck me was just the violation of our civil rights, our God-given rights to assemble for worship, is just one example. And I know we were all scared during the pandemic, but when the government tells the church that they have to close, those are the kind of overreaches that I think violate the Constitution. In Nancy Pelosi's territory, they actually had to show their vaccine card just to walk in the house of worship. And I thought that was an incredible overreach. I've got a video about that on my Facebook page. But, it's things like that, forcing employers to mandate injections when we didn't have any validation testing for vaccines back in the day. Even as a small business, because even below 100 people, because we make defense products, we were being told that we're going to have to force our employees to get vaccines. And it's not the employer's job to tell someone what to inject into their body. It's not the government's job either. So those are the kind of overreaches that caused me to get into this race and to fight for our civil liberties.
All right, Matt, I'm going to circle you in on this part of the conversation because one thing as legislators, we from time to time will pass resolutions that are basically making a statement to the federal government because there is only so much that we can do. We can pass, and Matt weigh in on this as an experienced legislator, there are things that we can do and things that we will pass that we know ultimately are probably going to end up in court, but it is one line of defense that we can use in order to get the issue before the courts. God help us now with the Supreme Court appointment. But anyway, that we can get legislation created purposely with the intent of getting it before the courts in order to help stop things. We've been successful on that on some occasions, and some things it's just upon us to elect good federal delegates that will go up to Washington and represent the values of us as Arkansans. I align with your thought processes. I will tell you that with regards to what you said about the vaccine. But Matt, from your perspective, you know what our limitations are. You know some of the resolutions that we have passed in the past in order to make statements to the federal government. You got any thoughts on that?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind is those rights not enumerated belong to the states. And so sometimes you have to be very creative, and you are correct. There are times we pass statutes or run statutes to try and get it in front of a court because that's our only way to get the issue dealt with, because they, at the federal level, have the ability to do things and we can't block a lot of things. But it's kind of our founding fathers were brilliant people. The way they structured this, the way they set it up, and I'd even say the second round, shortly thereafter, when they had this convention, what they set up is a system that's worked for well over 200 plus years. But if, as a state legislator, you need to be prepared to deal with things in a very creative manner that is being passed down from above, if you will. And so I think that's kind of what you're driving at, Kim. But we've had to do that several times in you and I's tenure. So.
Well, and I think when you talk about our forefathers, that is a hand of God moment in world history that
Absolutely.
God would inspire upon them, and they would be willing to listen to anticipate things that would come down the line that while they may not, have something personal to apply to it, as far as some of the unique situations we're dealing with in society today, they at least created the structure to provide those safeguards. I'm thinking of one example that's right out before us now is we ran election integrity bills this past session. We passed a pretty aggressive package, which I'm glad we did, because as things become apparent through investigations that are occurring around the nation, even some things because the Board of Election Commissioners recently sanctioned, one of the I forgot the phrase, the title of the person, but she was running the election location. Was disciplined because broke the law. And you've got a judge here in Arkansas that historically has a very liberal history of rulings, and now those are up for the Supreme Court. So sometimes we do intentionally pass laws for the purpose of getting it through the court system. You just pray that at the end of the day, those that are sitting on the bench, even if you got to appeal them up the line, you get them before judges that are just going to read the Constitution as it was originally written and apply their rulings to it. Any thoughts?
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly right. I don't mean to jump in front there, but I wanted to point out one other thing I meant to say earlier, which you also have to be very cognizant in that you're spending taxpayer dollars. So if you can write a statute that protects the citizens of Arkansas from a federal overreach, then by all means do it under policy, do it under statute. But if you can't, there are creative ways. But it's a much more expensive thing for the taxpayers and the state to do it that way. But sometimes that's what's available to you.
Well, and I think that's where we've got to use good discretion. We've got to have people in office that are able to use discretion to know that if you're going to go into that kind of a fight and you are going to spend money, taxpayers' money, through the Attorney General's office, who's going to have to defend these, that you want to have winnable cases and not just create not just create litigation that's going to cost us and we're going to lose at the end of the day. I will say that's the value of having an Attorney General also that has good, competent staff that can go in and represent us and be able to win those cases, and why we need to work with them as we develop these things to make sure we are going to win and not just and if something else is going on in another state, kind of like the abortion law, let's just say it, where we're waiting for the Mississippi ruling to come out, and other states are trying to get things passed when the common sense wisdom was, well, let's just wait and see what happens instead of creating a bunch of unnecessary litigation that's going to cost us a lot of money that we may not win in the end.
Yeah, in business, we call that return on investment. And so,
exactly,
we as business owners, Matt and I mean, we're used to that. Look at the investment, look at what the fight's going to cost, and decide if it's worth, the risk and the reward. So, love it.
What other areas, Walter, do you see that you have interest in working on when you get down here? There's always that learning curve that you got to get ahead as a newcomer. You may be ahead of some of the rest of us that came in as newcomers, but what do you see some other areas that you have interest in working in?
Education background. I come from a family of teachers, I should say. My branch of the family, we're the black sheep. We went into something else other than teaching. I think those things, educational, appeal to me. As the chairman of the STEM Coalition, I got a widespread statewide experience and exposure to some of the problems that we have with curriculum. And so I want to do things that defend our rights, not our rights exactly, but our values in the educational system. I think some of the candidates have it right when we say it's about education, not indoctrination. I want to make sure that we defend our children at their most vulnerable age. So those educational things are priority. Economic development's a priority because it leads to prosperity. And I'm an optimist at heart. I think that America's best days are in front of it. We've done great things in the past, and I think Arkansas is right there as well. We're going to do great things, but we have to defend our basic values.
All right, with the time I got left, let me kind of put it on two issues. One is both of y'all are businessmen, and you made the comment about taxes and business. Give me the punch list of things you think that as legislators, because you'll either be coming in, Matt's definitely going to be going out, but as a previous, as a sitting legislator and business owners, what are the things that you think that the state of Arkansas needs to do in order to make it easier on the businesses that we have, keep the businesses that we've got, because it's like church membership. You can be getting them in the front door, but if you're losing them out the back door, you're not gaining ground. So what are specific things that you think, coming in as a legislator, Matt, you going out as a legislator, but both being business owners, that we need to be focused on and that we can do to help business in Arkansas?
Yeah, so let's continue to lower the corporate tax rate, make sure that we're competitive with the states around us.
What's the number you think we ought to try to get to? What's a realistic, achievable, best for Arkansas, best for business that we need to set as a goal?
Yeah, I would say close to zero. I don't pretend to be an economist yet, so I don't want to say an absolute zero, but we've got to get it lower and closer to zero than we are now, at least by several percentage points, if not all the way to zero. I think that's going to make a big opportunity for the business owners to invest. Business owners love to create jobs. Jobs and business owners create tax base. So that's a symbiotic relationship that most people want to forget about. When we help our businesses, they will help our communities. Creating jobs in Alexander and Shannon Hills, honestly, are a priority for me. They're not the most affluent neighborhoods, but they're the ones that we need to help out, not give a handout to, but to help them in any way we can. Bryant's doing okay. We've got a great team there doing that. But I want to support those things that help create those jobs, especially, the teacher retirement system we talked about already. That would be a priority of mine. But those are the things that come to mind right away.
Matt, any thought on that one?
Well, just real quickly, I mentioned earlier the combination of taxes. I came into it wanting to fight the income tax battle, but in meeting and being involved with the team, the Heritage Foundation and their representatives convinced me it's the net tax liability per person in Arkansas that pays dividends. Drive everything down, still meet your needs. Don't pull a bankruptcy as the state because you just went to zero. Now, corporate taxes are a different type structure, and I appreciate Mr. Burgess's comments. There aren't the varied amount of type of taxes, but there can be incentives to offset those. And so driving to zero was a very unique comment that he just made. If the net tax to a corporate entity is driven down towards zero, it can still function as a revenue generator to grow our state. The symbiotic nature that he mentioned earlier is real. I mean, there's a reason our forefathers created government. It wasn't to have, chaos. They want it to be an organized structure where services are provided, but fair taxation with representation works. And so I think if I was going to still be in the legislature, it took so much, as you're well aware, Senator Hammer, to drive down the income tax to get us competitive on a net taxation basis. But I think that's where the future legislators are going to continue to drive that. But hopefully the triggers will kick and we're going to see 4.9% there. I would love to see the corporate tax there quickly and continue to drive to a net of zero.
Let me ask you about this. One of the things, getting qualified workforce. I think there's a couple issues there. One is people have gotten used to the government subsidies to the point that they're not interested in looking for a job. And there's going to be a reality day. I figure, 1 to 3 years as the government funds dry up, that people are going to realize they can't live on those subsidies forever. The other is just the educational loss that has occurred over the last couple of years. What are y'all's thoughts? And let me start with you, Walter. As far as you hire people, you're looking for people to hire. What do we need to do as a state to get ahead of that problem, if you even think that's a problem?
Oh, I definitely think it's a problem. I was asked this question recently. I think over the last couple of years, schooling at home, I would be very clear about that. Virtual has really had the biggest impact on our education of the elementary school ages. Number one priority, even though I'm a STEM person and I run a technology business, the number one priority has to be on reading at grade level. If that isn't happening, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, we need to pour whatever resources it takes right this second into those ages so that they're catching up and reading at grade level. That would be my number one priority. STEM stuff is great. Love that topic because it builds the workforce that I hope to hire in the future. But reading at grade level, there's no higher priority right now. And we need to make a very accurate assessment of who's reading at grade level. We don't need to change the rubric or the grading scale so that we look good. We need to stick with the rubrics that we've used over the last decade and say, are these kids reading at grade level? If not, let's put the money in, let's put the effort in, let's make an emergency clause, whatever we have to do to get those kids at grade level reading. That's got to be our number one priority.
All right, I got like less than 2 minutes. So, Matt, give you 30 seconds. Anything you want to say in summary?
I just think I appreciate the focus on education. I too am much like him, and that my father and mother were both teachers. I'm married to a teacher, the brother of a teacher. I am the black sheep in my family, being an engineer. But it's funny that people that are in business are all referencing back to this education, the so-called two cliffs. If you're not reading at third grade and you're not doing math at ninth and eighth grade, we're gonna be supporting you for life, literally.
Okay.
And so let's put the efforts into those.
All right, I've got to go real quick, Walter. Your website that you want people to go to?
BurgessForArkansas.com.
BURGUSS.
BURGESS.
Okay, for Arkansas, and that's FOR, not the number 4, right?
Correct.
Okay, there you go. My guests today on the Kim Hammer Show have been Walter Burgess, running for district down in Saline County, takes up Alexander Shannon Hills, Bryant, and then Mat Pitsch. Thanks for stepping in and helping out, Matt, today. I had a vacancy at the last minute, so appreciate you helping fill the void. Go up to the KimHammerShow.com website if you want to get a replay of this or share it, and please go up there and like that page. Hope you have a great Saturday. See you next Saturday.